health is a state subject. If you really want to make a difference, start there. If you're doing so much, talk to people, ask for help. What they need to eat, how much they need to eat, how much water they need to drink, what they need to wear. So whose life actually the person is living? Theirs or the caregivers?
Welcome to the Ivory podcast. My guest today is Miss Ramani Sundaram. Miss Ramani Sundaram has been working in the space of dementia care for over 12 years. Today, she's a deputy director at the Nightingales Medical Trust. She's got a master's in clinical neuroscience and gerontology. Apart from that, she also holds an MBA in healthcare management. It's our pleasure today to welcome Miss Ramani Sundaram to the Ivory podcast. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
I want to begin with how you chose dementia caregiving as a vocation for yourself. I know there have been a series of coincidences or deliberate events along the way, but tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, so I completed my master's in clinical neuroscience in about 2009. And at that point of time, we actually can explore different fields. I was always inclined towards geriatric care. And I started my journey with epilepsy and stroke and cognitive impairment. And that's how I stumbled upon vascular dementia. And I wanted to know more about dementia. And that's how I started my journey with dementia care. Since I was a neuroscientist, I actually took the route that everyone else takes, that is towards PhD, wanting to do the pre-diagnostic biomarkers and stuff like that. But after a certain point, I realized that I don't belong to the laboratory. I wanted to do more work with people. So I tried to build my clinical experience around people. And I was really fascinated by the fact that there's so much money being invested in pre-diagnostic research. But by then you actually find a cure or you find a way to diagnose this condition. There are going to be thousands, lakhs of people with this condition who we really don't know how to help. So I wanted to put my energy into actually how I can help people better, how I can help family caregivers better to take care of persons with dementia, because I think that's even more challenging than actually going into diagnostic research. So that's how I have been in the space of dementia care for past 14 years now.
And in these 14 years, I want to ask you, what's the hardest thing about your profession?
It takes me way back in 2010 when I joined Nightingales Medical Trust, which is a leading dementia care provider in the country. So I joined their residential care center for dementia. And there I actually have my first patient, if you would call it. I met in memory clinic. I did the assessment. This is one nice Gujarati family. Father had dementia and both the children were in the US. So they brought him. He couldn't recognize his children anymore. He was a very, very loving father. And he told me that both his children are kidnapped by these two grown-up men who are his own children. So he said, my children go to school and these people who have brought me, I don't know who they are, but they're not letting me go home. And my wife and my small kids are waiting for me there. And that, I just couldn't digest that. I just couldn't digest that a father whose children, grown-up children are just there. He just doesn't know that they are his children and he was so worried. See, for us, it's so easy to pass on, oh, these are delusions. But for him, it's reality. And that man was depressed. He was distraught that his children are not around. That actually took a toll on me. Many such stories of that man every day coming to me. Have you seen my kids? They just went to school in the morning or they haven't come back. So this, when we talk about caregiving or professional or personal, that's the reason it's very distressing. So I would say the challenge has been that we keep pouring support. At some point of time, you just feel empty. You don't have much to give. So you need to take that step back, replenish and come back. So that has been a very, very difficult thing for me. So I make sure that when I feel very overwhelmed, I take a break, I recharge myself and I come. I think that's very important.
But it's inspiring. You're leading the work for so many families, for India. And touching upon that, given that you work so closely in the caregiving space, what is, let's say, whenever somebody is diagnosed with dementia, what's the number one thing you tell them? Just first up, just trying to educate them or ease them into the caregiving process?
Right.
Is there, I'm sure there's no easy way out, but what are your, let's say, your top 1 or 2 pieces of advice for anybody watching this?
It's a very interesting question, because one of the challenges we face at Memory Clinic is people don't come to us when they are in the early stages. We have seen that people don't get diagnosis at a proper time. A, there is stigma. B, I think that people many times think it's normal aging. He's just forgetting, he's just become old. So people don't come to us when it is early stages. They come to us when the signs are very much evident and it is disrupting the activities of daily living. So the person has gone for taking bath and has just come out without taking bath, have forgotten to switch off the gas stove or some things like that. That's when they come to us. At that point of time, family would have Googled. Most of the families would have Googled. They've understood what it is and they would have got a feel of it. And when they come to us, breaking the diagnosis is one of the toughest part to do. Many of us would have heard diagnosing someone with dementia is like a long goodbye, right? Slowly the person is going away from you. It's a long goodbye that the family has to say. It's very difficult. So when we are breaking the diagnosis, we are very mindful of that. We try to educate them. I remember how I used to talk about diagnosis to people. We used to take a white sheet. We used to draw a brain. We used to show these are cells. This is how they communicate. What has happened due to this condition. Why the person may act certain times, which might hurt you, but it's not deliberate. So we try to tell them end to end about dementia, that this is what it is. This is what is going to come, and you need to plan. Many times families don't take it well. I must say that, because since there's no treatment and you try to tell them that you plan this, not many families are very forthcoming. But we as an organization in Nightingales Medical Trust, we believe in the concept of advanced care planning, that the family should know what is in their way so that they can prepare better, finances, legal or physically, whether someone has to leave the job, look after this person, what are the different stages. So this is how we try to do. And what we have also seen is most of the time when people have initial signs of dementia, they would go to their GP. It's unfortunate, but primary healthcare providers are not very adept at diagnosing dementia. So this is one of the gaps that we identified very early, that people have gone to multiple doctors and none of them could actually diagnose that this is dementia. So by the time they come to us, it's already a little late. But we ensure that we try to tell them as much as possible. That's the reason each assessment of ours takes about 2 to 2.5 hours, because we ensure that we tell them what they are facing and what it's going to be like.
And you spoke about the different stages, right? So first stage is, you mentioned that by the time somebody comes to you, it's already too late.
Right.
What can be done today to educate or familiarize the GP, the family doctors? What can possibly the Indian healthcare system equip them with? Does it mean more cognitive health checkups or something else? Could you throw some light in terms of what you might have experienced?
I think it's a very important question. I think now a lot has been spoken about dementia risk reduction. A lot of money is going into that kind of research. And it's also talking about early diagnosis, because you can have a better quality of life. So it needs a multi-pronged approach. People need to be aware that I think post-COVID what has happened is young people are more open about talking about mental health, but it has not reached the older generation yet. So one of the organizations that I work for, that's the Dementia India Alliance, one of the things that we have taken into forefront is something called as cognitive screening, and it's free. What we are trying to do is we are trying to educate senior citizens, we are trying to educate youth, saying that just like how you get a blood test done after the age of 60, go and get a cognitive screening done. It's just as important as physical health checkup, and this does not need any withdrawal of blood or anything. These are simple paper pencil tests. There are a few questions that we ask, and it can tell us whether the person is at risk of dementia or any other cognitive decline which needs further assessment. So this is something that we are actively doing. We are trying to tell that brain health is as important as physical health. Don't be ashamed to go and get yourself screened for any kind of condition. We actually started this initiative 5-6 years ago, but it never picked up. People were sometimes very, there was something skeptical about going and getting a cognitive screening done. So what we try to do is, how about make it virtual so that people don't have to come, nobody needs to know, you can do it at the comfort of your room. And we were surprised that actually online memory screening worked well. Elders are very confident of getting online, getting the screening done. Children are more confident about logging in from home, helping their parents to get the screening done. So that's one way of doing it. So at Dementia and Alliance, we provide free cognitive screening, and there's a platform called DEM Clinic, which is online memory clinic. So we try to promote free memory screening for senior citizens. That's one. Number two is awareness. How can we build awareness? So few of the things that we have undertaken is called DEM Champ, which is called a Dementia Champion Program. It's for students. So what we are trying to do is, we are trying to educate students about basics of dementia. And the call to action is, in your community, if there are elderly, if there are people who are above the age of 60, all you have to do is get yourself screened. Just have that awareness. And one of the things we are trying to do with DEM Champ is, they have to do one awareness talk in their community about dementia. So destigmatize the condition. That's number two. And students are a large advocates for dementia. Number three is also about involving government. So through Dementia and the Alliance, one of the things we were successfully able to do was get Karnataka to announce dementia as a public health priority, in which one of the things we are going to do is do a big time awareness drive, wherein we are going to give awareness to primary healthcare providers, ASHA workers, then district medical officers, all government medical systems, then bring in MBBS graduates, train them how to identify early signs of dementia, so that elders, when they go for a comprehensive screening, cognitive screening is part of it. So this requires a multi-pronged approach, and it's a long-term thing.
Yeah.
We have to do it sustainably, like for a couple of years, for things to actually improve.
One of the things that we are interested to know is, why is there still no medication for dementia? So many advanced conditions today, terminal conditions, are almost on the verge of clinical breakthroughs, but dementia still seems to be a little far off. Could you throw some light and explain, let's say to a layman, in terms of why it's very clinically hard to treat dementia with just medication?
Right. So one of the things that we do is also called as dementia training for anybody, including people in the slums. How do I explain them about dementia? And through that, we have some answers to that question. So when someone asks me from, say, someone who's not educated and says, tell me what dementia is. So I give them a very simple example. It's got nothing, no scientific connotations or something. So I tell them, think about a chalk piece. Okay? Think that's the brain. Okay? Which is affected by dementia. You start writing on the board. What happens to the chalk piece? It becomes smaller, smaller, smaller. It starts degenerating. That's what happens to your brain as dementia affects. So you keep writing. That means as the disease progresses, the length of the chalk piece becomes smaller, smaller, smaller. As you're writing, the powder falls from the chalk piece, right? Can you aggregate those powders and make it into one whole chalk piece again by yourself? It is not possible. So that's the degenerative process of the brain. And brain is so complex that I'm not even sure that we understand it fully, right? So when I talk about dementia, take person A, person B. Both MRI scans are in front of me. Both of them have similar brain areas being damaged, but the signs of person A will be completely different from person B. Because this particular area which is affected in person A stores very different kinds of memory because it's personal. This person B will have a very different kinds of memory. And the brain, it's about neuroplasticity, right? The wiring, how it works is the kind of skills you practice, your experience, that's what molds your brain. So one treatment will not work for the other person. That's why in dementia, person-centered care takes such a high stake. We call it person-centered care. A solution for one will not work for the other. Brain is so complex that if one area is affected, the implication clinically is so different from person to person. So say for example, people are now talking about stem cell therapy. Now this, say a region in the brain has died and you want to replace it with stem cells. Yes, you are replacing the new cell, but does these new cells have the same memory that the last cells possess? No. Do they have same wiring that these last cells possess? No. So unless it's a learned memory, these kind of replacements are not possible. And since it's a neurodegenerative condition which progresses the synapses, the connection, it's like one affected, it affects five affected, it affects the 20 connections that you formed. These connections are different from one person to another. That's why one solution doesn't. So, that's the reason getting a treatment for dementia is taking us so long. And though I would love to see that there's some treatment for dementia, but I think it's going to be challenging. Maybe they would be able to find drugs which could slow down the disease progression much, much further if diagnosed early. But an absolute cure, I think it's very far.
So we spoke about early diagnosis, some of the work that you are driving with regard to awareness. We spoke about dementia care management, which happens, let's say, when somebody comes to you, like you said, it's late. What is in between these two, spectrum? Like what else happens in that journey for a dementia patient? So let's say somebody's got diagnosed. What are the next few logical steps that a family needs to keep in mind as they plan for like better or at least a good quality of life for such a patient?
So ideally, one should not refrain from getting diagnosis at the right point of time. A. B, if you get the diagnosis at the right point of time, there are drugs, though, the effect is not very good, but they can still give you a decent quality of life. So you should go see a psychiatrist, get a diagnosis, get started on a treatment plan. Some of these drugs, initially when started, may have side effects, but you should bear with it and continue the medication. And they will not do wonders. They are only slowing down the disease progression. So the person will not see any improvement. So you need to have a realistic expectation that this is what I'm looking at. That's number one. Number two, as the disease would progress, the person will have, more needs because, cognitive impairment will become more. There might be issues with mood, personality. The person may have difficulty doing the activities of daily living. Much of the times, all of this, more than the person who's affected with dementia, family caregivers, it impacts more. Because they really either have to leave their job, sit at home, look after the person. It's very difficult to balance things out. An ideal strategy would be look for support at those stages. And one of the wonderful support system is a dementia daycare. So basically, how dementia daycare works is, it's just like how you go for child daycare. So the person is being dropped at the daycare in the morning, and the person preferably is there morning to evening. So there might be specialists like social worker, psychologist, and caregiver who would keep the person engaged. We draw up a care plan for the person. The person would do some physical activity, some cognitive activity. The most important thing that daycare provides to a person with dementia is an opportunity to remain social. Key, it's very, very important. Once a person gets dementia, they usually go into a shell. Because the world doesn't relate to them, they don't relate to the world. Both. So it is important that they socialize, they form those social bonds. So dementia daycare is a wonderful way of dealing with the initial to moderate stages of dementia. Number two would be also to get good training. Family caregivers should definitely get good training. Why? Because many times the way the person behaves, it leads to a lot of stress among the family. Sometimes they may think, they are doing it deliberately. I remember a very peculiar case wherein the daughter, who's an IT professional, single daughter, looking after the mother. Mother was in mild stages of Alzheimer's disease, and they used to live in a big apartment complex. So the mother used to go to the door and tell the neighbors, my daughter is not feeding me. She has kept me arrested in this room, and she's doing all sort of things to me and stuff like that. And the neighbors used to judge her for treating her mother like that. And when she used to call us and tell us, we used to tell her she's not doing it deliberately. It is a part and parcel of the Alzheimer's disease that she has. But when the guests would come home, the mother would behave so well that guests even couldn't believe that she has any kind of condition. So the family, the daughter was like, no, my mother is doing it deliberately. I don't want to look after her. So these kind of things can happen. And, you may reach a breaking point very soon. So it's important you get training. It's important you get support. So that is something that we would say. And when you are unable to look after at home anymore, of course, there are residential care centers that you can look at. And also, things that would help would be getting a trained caregiver who can look after the person at home, and support groups. We may tell whatever best information we have, families don't take it very well after a point of time. But in support group, people who have gone through such condition, they say family members are more perseverant of those information. So I think support group also can do wonders. So one of the things that we have started as Dementia India Alliance is called a Dementia Support Line. Again, a free service. Anyone who has a person with dementia at home in India, they can call this number called 8585 990 990, and they can get any kind of information about dementia, what stages they are in, what kind of care they would need. Across country, how they can be supported, we try to tell them. So this must be the ideal strategy that the family should look for.
Got it. Let's talk about the caregiving aspect of it, because while at Ivory we are also talking a lot about how people can have access to better brain health, how people should get diagnosed before. One aspect that we understood really lacks a lot of awareness is what should caregivers do? And you mentioned you are a caregiver yourself. So talk to us a little bit about your journey as a caregiver, and from that, if there are any, I would say, experiences that could benefit somebody else whose family is just got diagnosed with dementia.
Right. Caregiving is a tough job. We know caregiving for anybody, whether it's a terminal cancer patient, whether it is somebody with stroke, whether it's somebody with dementia, it's a very, very tough thing. But caregiving for a person with dementia is even more tougher. And I'll tell you why. Because what happens is when you're caring for somebody with stroke, when you're caring for somebody with cancer, many times the caregiving is rewarded with a smile, rewarded with, thank you, you're doing this for me. But for a person with dementia, many times it could be met with, maybe angst. It might be met with not being thankful about what you're doing. So in spite of all that, you have to do what you're doing. So it's a very, very tough job. And when we talk about caregiving, my journey of being a personal caregiver has come after actually being a professional caregiver. So I think for me it was easier because I understand the condition better. I know what to expect and I know what to do. But when one doesn't know, it can really hit you hard. When I talk to family caregivers, one of the things I try to tell them is, think about 2 glasses, right? One is full of water. There's another glass which has got a hole. You pour, the water's going to go. You keep pouring. One day, both the glasses will be empty. This is what caregiving does to a person. So it's essential you should know how much to pour, because this is going to leak. So you should know where to draw boundaries. In India, what happens is caregiving is, sort of part and parcel of our family value system. So if a father is sick, it is just understood that the family of, maybe the son has to look after the father. You don't want, that doesn't matter. But it's part and parcel of our value system. And when you are a woman, it's even more harder because you have to look after family. The caregiving job is reserved for you. So it's even more harder. So for caregivers, it's essential to, draw boundaries saying, I can do this much. Beyond this, it's not possible. A. B. Talking to the family and bringing other players inside to help you out. It's very important that we communicate transparently. That's one thing that in Indian household we don't do. We keep doing things and we keep saying, I'm doing so much. If you're doing so much, talk to people, ask for help. That is number 2 that you need. See, professional help is available. Seek out, reach out. And next is look after yourself. Only if you are healthy, you can tender to someone who's not. So looking after your personal health, your mental health is very important. And here again, I would like to give a case study that I remember and it stayed with me. The lady that I was talking to you about, an IT professional whose mother was with dementia. So this particular lady, about 15 years, she did the caregiving of her mother. She refused to let her go to a residential care center. Till the mother passed away, she was the one who looked after her mother. During this time, she lost touch with her colleagues. She lost touch with her work. She lost touch with her social circle. Everything was lost. Her only job was get up, clean mommy, take care of mommy, look after mommy, go back to sleep. Get up, take care of mommy, look. This is what it was. When her mother passed away, she really didn't know what to do because there was no personal life for her. It took her about 3 years to come out of the caregiving role to shed it and be a new person who can talk to other people, make friends, get back to social circle. So your identity is not caregiver. You are you, and you are also doing caregiving. So remember that.
Right, that's beautifully worded and expressed. In your journey, as let's say on the work side, has there recently been any cases where you felt that there was a particular patient who pleasantly surprised you with his or her recovery? If yes, what were maybe some of the conditions that helped? This could be, needs of physical activity or cognitive activity or
Right.
anything.
I think many times what happens when we talk about persons with dementia, we always put it as, the P is small, the D is big. We forget the person, we really glorify the dementia, while it's the other way around. The P is big, the D is small. So it's the person with dementia, just like somebody has diabetes. So the person is still there. There's so much that the person can still do. But what happens once they have dementia, we just assume that they can't do a lot of things. It's not true. In our day-to-day experience, we definitely have seen people do things which we did not expect them to do. I wouldn't call it recovery because that usually doesn't happen. But they do surprise us with skills which we thought were never there. So that definitely happens. That's the very reason that we talk about cognitive rehabilitation, or we talk about Montessori activity approach for persons with dementia. When a person has dementia, it's very important that you have a proper routine for that person. They should know what they have to do one after the other, because that will reduce confusion, disorientation, challenging behavior. Much of it will reduce if they know that they have tasks assigned for them and they can go from one task to another. I particularly remember this person who was a retired judge with dementia who was admitted in one of the care centers. And we gave him a Montessori activity of actually putting A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H together. So he saw that activity and he said, you know who I am? I'm a retired judge. I know everything. How can you give me an activity like that? So I sat down with him and I said, I know you are, but I really don't know how to do it. Can you help me? And then I realized that how he was struggling to actually put those letters together until Z. And I realized that many times what happened, people don't know how to do it. So they would just say, I don't want to do it. So you need to understand where that comes from. And when he completed the A to Z, he was so proud of himself and he flashed such a beautiful smile. So that stayed with me for a very long time. Even when we talk to family caregivers, we try to tell them that dementia is a journey that you are going to lose, but always prepare for the best. It is very important. There will be these small wins that you'll get. The person may make a coffee for themselves, and these are small wins that you can see. So it's very important you keep them physically and mentally active. Physical activities are very important just to maintain the overall health, and mental activity helps them to remain socially active also. They talk to their friends who are similar stages of dementia. The peer support really helps.
Let's talk about a typical dementia care center, like the way Nightingales runs. What's a typical day like for its residents there?
Right. So we run two kinds of center. One is the dementia daycare center. Another one is a residential care center. So typically at the daycare center, it's a very exciting place to be. So at around 10ish, people start dropping their little ones. So a little one in the sense, the persons with dementia. And, the friends would be waiting for the other friend to come and stuff like that. Some of them would refuse to come, cry, wanting to go home. It's the same drill that happens. Yes. And we would convince them to come in and relax. They don't remember that they've been coming to that place every day. So it's difficult for them. And to travel in the traffic and come. And, not all days are good. So they all come, and it typically at around 10:30, everyone settles down. They start with a cup of tea. For a person with dementia, that becomes very important. So when they're restless, when you give them food, something that smells nice, that open up their senses, they tend to feel good. So, some cookies, some tea, that'll be very nice. So we start with that. Once they've had their tea and everything, then we start with something called as an orientation activity, wherein we have a big board wherein we try to tell them to stick what day of the week it is, what date it is, what month it is, what year it is, what is the recent festival that has gone by. It's just to orient them, where they are, which floor, that happens. in the whole group. One by one, everybody comes and does that activity. Once that is over, then we have 1 hour of physical activity. So this will be mild stretching, chair-based exercises. It can also have some stand-up exercises, some pre-dancing with music and stuff like that. Just about an hour. After that, we have something called as the group cognitive activity, wherein they all sit around in a group and we do a cognitive activity. Like, it could be anything, maybe play a word game or, try to do passing the parcel and, try to tell each other's name and stuff like that. So there are many activities that we have designed for them. And then they break for lunch. They have their lunch. They would have got it from home or we are providing or whatever. So after the lunches happen, we have something called as the individual cognitive activity. So each of them would have a care plan for them. We know that what are the skills they still retain, what are the skills they don't. So we try to do individual care plan. So the caregivers, volunteers, interns, they all sit around. 1:1, we try to do some activities. After that, we have movie time. So they watch movies, old movies we put. And these movies, we do something called as cognitive stimulation. So say a Rajesh Khanna movie is happening, we'll ask, what is that character's name? Which color of the door did they come and enter? So there's different small, simple things that we ask them. So they watch about movies for about an hour or so. And then they have their cup of tea and all that. And then it's called the free hour, where we leave them with their friends. They can do whatever they like. And then we do something called as reminiscence, wherein we try to tell them, each of them, that this is your family, this is your home, these are your children, this is whom you live with, and now you'll be going home. So prep them about the change of environment. So they've come from home to daycare. Now we prep them from going for daycare to that thing. And we have a notebook for them where we write, today you have done a good job, you have to come back tomorrow. And we tell the family, next day when they come, you make sure that they read it so that they feel comfortable, and we make them write their name. So they know that it's their handwriting. They have a look and they come, and really acts as a trigger for them to come back next day. So that's typically what happens in a daycare. In a residential care center, ideally people get up at around 6:30, have their bath and everything. 8 o'clock they have their breakfast, and around 9ish they all come down to a common area wherein we play some bhajan, some spiritual songs for them. It must be around by 9:30. 9:30 to 10:30, same physical activity happen. 10:30 to 12:30, cognitive activity in a huge group. It happens. So there we have psychologists, social workers, caregivers who do this activity. It is therapeutic to the caregiver as well as to the person with dementia. So they all do it together. 12:30 is lunchtime. And people who are in residential care center, many times they have progressed quite a bit. So they can't remain active throughout the day. So about 1:30 to 3:30 they rest. It's a sleep time. 3:30 they get their coffee or tea. Diaper change happens if at all they are on the diaper or something. 4 o'clock they come down. They have a walk in the garden. They sit down in the garden, take the nice sunshine, some cookies, some snack that they have. And around 5 o'clock there'll be activities such as passing the ball, musical chair, things that are little fun and those sort of a thing. And that around 6 to 7:30 they watch TV or movies or whatever it is. 7:30 they take their dinner, and 8:30 light music goes. We prep them for sleep. Some light music, not much of a noise, not much interaction. Prep them for sleep. 9 light out. So that's how it is.
And you mentioned you make the dementia daycare patients or visitors write something.
Yeah.
So they remember.
May or may not. But our idea is we believe that they will, and it's their own handwriting. So we think they'll relate to it. See, out of 10, maybe 4 people remember, 6 don't. But for us, the 4 is a win.
Yeah. That's great. In all your years of, in this space, what do you think is a common misconception about dementia that people have, that if given a voice like you are getting today, that you wish you would, reverse or change?
Many things, actually. One of the things that, we at Nightingales Medical Trust or Dementia India Alliance advocate is, please don't call them patients. We said, don't call them dementia patients. Somebody has sugar, you call them, they have diabetes. But you don't call them patient, do you? It's a lifestyle disease, right? So dementia is going to remain with them for quite some time. So we don't want them to be addressed as patients. Because when you say they are patients, that means they are sick. They're not sick. They have a condition that's going to be with them. So that's takeaway point A. B, don't treat them like children. That's something that we have been very pained by seeing. Once they get dementia, people think that, they become childlike, treating them like a child. That's not right. They have years of experience. They know what is happening to them. There are so many things they can still decide for themselves. You taking decisions on each and everything for them and child zoning them is definitely a big no-no. That should not happen. And number 3, which I tried to tell you, there are so many things they can still do. So give them that opportunity. Once they get dementia, people just want them to just sit. No, there are so many things they can still do. They can still go to a shop, buy milk if assisted. They can still do some cooking if somebody can help. Allow them those things. One thing that, when we talk about quality of life, what is it? When you have, rights over your body, you know what you want to wear. You can wear what you want. You can eat what you want. You can drink whenever you want. Your wishes are taken into consideration. For a person with dementia, many times caregiver decides everything from them. What they need to eat, how much they need to eat, how much water they need to drink, what they need to wear. So whose life actually the person is living? Theirs or the caregivers? And that's the saddest thing that can happen to a person. So don't take away the quality of life from them. Leave the decision to them.
Got it. What's the most fulfilling thing about your job? Like, you spoke about some of the more harder aspects about your own personal journey, but the fact that you're still neck deep in it across multiple roles means that obviously this is rewarding for you as well.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I think when we give a diagnosis, recently, again, one of the cases that stayed with me for a very long time is just about 20 days ago, I met a father, 66-year-old, who came with me for his son with dementia, 44, with frontotemporal dementia. Caught him very, very early. The person was already in a catheter. The person had forgotten communication, had forgotten 44-year-old with frontotemporal. Father is a caregiver. And he came to me, he spoke to me, he asked me how I can help. He had seen the best of neurologists, he saw best of psychiatrists. He's seen everybody who's best. But he still came. And I asked him, what is it that I can tell him that others have not? He knows everything. He knows what is the prognosis. He knows everything. So, I tried to tell him that it's hard and, we are there for you. Whatever it is, we can help. And, I tried to tell him something that somebody taught me when I became a master trainer in Alzheimer's in Australia, that dementia, you should always plan for the worst, but hope for the best. And, that's the kind of value that we try to inculcate in family caregivers also. So this 66-year strong man, where I finished everything, he really broke down. And he told me that I met all of them. I never cried, but here I did. Because I think that all of them spoke to me as a father of a patient. You spoke to me as a person who I am. And when he said thank you, I think that is something which will keep me going for another 15 years. So,
let's change gears a bit.
Yeah.
That was very moving. To your work as in both academia and work, you've exposure to working and studying abroad, and obviously in India. Maybe break this down in 2 parts. What is India doing better than, let's say, their Western counterparts in managing dementia? And what can India learn from the rest of the world in, let's say, managing dementia?
Right. So, I have done work in Australia and in the UK. Both are one of the leading people in dementia. One of the things India is doing better, I would like to believe that we are doing dementia care much better. And there are reasons why I would say that. One is the cost at which we are managing dementia it's unheard of when you go to Western countries. The cost at which we are managing residential care, day care, or just dementia in general is way lesser than what the West is doing. So that's number 1. Number 2, role of family. Abroad, what happens is elders prepare themselves to go to our assisted living. So even when they get dementia, they are actually quite well planned and sorted about it. So there, what happens is they are well prepared to go into the things. They know what it is and all of it. And the role of family is much lesser. So when we talk about caregiver burden or burnout or things like that, I think that is way more lesser there compared to here. Here, the family takes an active role in management of person with dementia. In spite of dementia care being an out-of-pocket expense, family play a very, very active role in looking after their loved ones. And being in the sector for 14, 15 years, I can tell you, family doesn't want to let go of their parents to a residential care center unless it's absolutely necessary. They fight. They really fight. They really want to look after the person. Even once after admitted to residential care, family is quite guilt-ridden and they want to be an active role in whatever happens to their loved one. And also, I feel that in India, culturally, we are a very well-connected social structure. So, in a residential care setup like ours at Nightingales Medical Trust, caregivers, if you ask them, how do you look after the person with dementia? If you go abroad and ask them, yeah, I've been taught, I've been trained, so these are the protocol, that's how I look after. Here you go and ask a caregiver how I look after my grandfather, how I look after my grandmother, that's how I'm looking after them. It's just innate in our culture. So I think when you talk about person-centered care, we are way ahead compared to other countries. But what we can learn, I think standards of care, dementia residential care is booming. There are more and more players. Nightingales Medical Trust was one of the very early players in dementia care. Now there are so many of them. But do we have similar standards across facilities? We don't know. So there is a need for standardized care across the facility. We need to talk about ethics. We need to talk about restraints. We need to talk about fair usage of drugs. We need to talk about decisions in palliative care such as Ryle's tube insertion, catheter, life prolonging. These are things where I think protocols we need to learn from people abroad, and also usage of technology. I think that in UK or in Australia, they're quite far ahead in terms of usage of technology so that they can cut manpower. So I think that is something we should learn, not to cut manpower, because I think that's our strength. That person-centered care comes from a person, not from a machine. So that we need to retake, but how we can use technology more efficiently to cut overheads is definitely something we should explore.
Got it. And as somebody who is now part of the public policy, framework that organizations like Dementia India Alliance are leading, what are, let's say, one or two asks or let's say suggestions that you have for the government in general?
Right. I think it takes back to the question that why was Dementia India Alliance formed at the very first place? We as Nightingales Medical Trust were already doing some work in dementia care, and we realized that there's so much more need. We are in Bangalore. We were getting people from Punjab, from Kashmir, from Madhya Pradesh and all who were coming and availing our residential care. They don't recognize the weather of Bangalore. They don't recognize the food that we provide at the residential care center. See, all these are very important for a person with dementia. They always go back to their earlier years of memory. So the food, the kind of weather, the kind of people who look after them, the language, everything has an impact. We always say that a person with dementia should not be removed from their native environment. It's better for them to remain there. But there aren't care providers who can give that sort of a care in those places. So Dementia India Alliance was formed in order to strengthen dementia care services across the country, A. B is also that the kind of numbers, right now we are talking about 8.8 million people with dementia, and this is given that only 10% ever receive a diagnosis. So we don't even know what are the real numbers. So the numbers are going to be huge. The kind of cost we are talking about in dementia care just not will affect the family. It will be a burden to the healthcare. It will also be a burden to the community and society at large. So something needs to be done. That's why Dementia India Alliance was formed, wherein we got some credible dementia care service providers across the country, whether it is SCARF, DemCare SCARF from Chennai, or we are talking about Heritage Foundation from Hyderabad, or care providers from Vizag, Cochin. We got a lot of them together. And we also got some family caregivers who are in strong positions, who have gone through this condition, who want to help others. And this was formed. And we wanted to increase A, awareness, B, provide support services across the country, C, get the government to come and do something. Many of us can try, but the impact that the government can make is going to be very, very huge. So we want to take up policy as one of the very, very key points of Dementia India Alliance. And one of our plan was to actually get a national dementia plan. That's what we wanted to advocate for. And the founders of the organization tried to go to Delhi. We met the health secretary. We tried to meet different department people. See, there's one challenge about dementia. When we talk about dementia, it gets split into two departments: Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. So since it's split like that, it's nobody's business. So what happens is, when we talk about the medical aspects of dementia, it comes under Ministry of Health. But when we talk about the care aspects of dementia, we're talking about national policy for elderly and things like that, it falls under Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. So it actually needs work from many ministries together, actually. So when they tried to talk to them, they told us that health is a state subject. If you really want to make a difference, start there. And they also said that in India, there are so many other problems, which we have to agree, which are perhaps more priority than dementia care. So we decided, okay, what we have to do is, our plan is by 2028, can we get at least 5 states to announce dementia policy for their own state? So we started with Karnataka. We met the health minister. We partnered with NIMHANS, as one of the leading neuroscience organization in the country. They believed that this is a necessity, and we got Karnataka to announce dementia as a public health priority. And this is based on the WHO Global Health Response to Dementia. So it covers many aspects, including awareness. That's the first and foremost thing. Second, improving diagnosis. Then support for carers, support for persons with dementia. Then we are talking about, a registry for persons with dementia where we know what is there. Then research. So we're trying to cover all of this. And the most important vertical that we want to work immediately is dementia risk reduction. Because that's where you can save cost. Once the person gets dementia, there's nothing much that one can do. But what you can try to do is get less and less people who get dementia. So we are working on that. Right now we have done Karnataka. Our idea is next, either Tamil Nadu we can go. Kerala already has a public policy on dementia. And the idea is to see how these policies are working well, so that, we look at least South Indian states lead the way in dementia care policy, and then actually vouch for national dementia policy.
Got it. That's very thoughtful and very, planned with a long-term horizon in mind, which is commendable. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom of your experience with us today, Ramani. Before we end, I want to ask you, what's your one message of hope for anybody who's watching this and is just being, let's say, diagnosed at risk or diagnosed with dementia?
Right. So, just see dementia like diabetes. You've got it. You have to manage it. It's going to stay with you for life. Like how for diabetes, you have to take medication. You have to keep yourself active, stay healthy. That's what they say for diabetes, right? Eat medication, stay healthy, watch your diet. Similarly, for dementia, that's what you have to do. Be healthy, both mentally and physically. Watch your diet, get help, both the person with dementia and the family caregiver. And yes, prepare for the worst, but hope for the best.
Wow, that's wonderful note to end on, Ramani. Thank you so much for being with us here on the Ivory podcast.